welcome to Pondering the Orb. I'm your host, the wandering fantasy author J. Requard, and things are afoot. So please like and subscribe, and let's get on our way. Honestly, life got in the way of this episode, so we're going to read some Tolkien poems, because it's Tolkien, and it seems now to read some poems. Here we go!
Our first poem is The Shadow Man, alternatively called The Shadow Bride. Tolkien began writing this in 1936 and did not finish until 1962. Let's read. There was a man who dwelt alone, as day and night went past. He sat as still as carven stone, and yet no shadow cast. The white owls perched upon his head, beneath the winter moon. They wiped their beaks and thought him dead, under the stars of June. There came a lady clad in gray, in the twilight shining. One moment she would stand and stay, her hair with flowers entwining. He woke, as had he sprung from stone, and broke the spell that bound him. He clasped her fast, both flesh and bone, and wrapped her shadow around him. There nevermore she walks her ways, by sun or moon or star. She dwells below where neither days nor nights there are. But once a year when caverns yawn and hidden things awake, they dance together till dawn, and a single shadow make. Our next poem is a Lord of the Rings and Middle-earth classic. This poem is called Upon the Hearth the Fire's Red, which Tolkien began in 1938 and finished in 1954. Here's the final text. Upon the hearth the fire's red, beneath the roof there is a bed, but not yet weary are our feet, still round the corner we may meet. A sudden tree or standing stone, that none have seen but we alone. Tree and flower and leaf and grass, let them pass, let them pass. Hill and water under sky, pass them by, pass them by. Still round the corner there may wait a new road or a secret gate, and though we pass them by today, tomorrow we may come this way, and take the hidden paths that run toward the moon or to the sun. Apple, thorn, and nut and sloe, let them go, let them go. Sand and stone and pool and dell, fare you well, fare you well. Home is behind, the world ahead, and there are many paths to tread, through shadows to the edge of night, until the stars are all alight. Then world behind and home ahead, we'll wander back to home and bed. Mists and twilight, cloud and shade, away shall fade, away shall fade. Fire and lamp and meat and bread, and then to bed, and then to bed. Fucking Tolkien rocks.
I'll key you in with a little bit more later, but I'm now on a quest to save a house, a pool, and a paradise. So with that being said, we're going to read from my 2025 Swords and Sorcery magazine release, A Blackened Shield. This is a story about a situation I think we're all trying to get away from.
Brined by the sea, his tunic and trousers stuck to his flesh, he shivered awake in the wet rocks where he lay. He braced against his shield, still in his left hand. He pushed against it, pushing up until he found his knees under him. Canute struggled into a kneeling position before he scanned the beach around him. The decapitated head beside his knee belonged to the nameless hero that had led them. Lifeless eyes cast to the storming sky, seeing no more. Just one piece of the incountable dead. Corpses covered the shore as far as he could see before the mist claimed the distance where the fight continued. Confused, alone, Canute stood slowly, his shield his only remaining possession. The giant bellowed behind him. Charging from the mist, the barbaric Makul bore his two axes, but flames roared from the iron edges as he slashed. Canute brought his shield up in time to catch the two strikes, which twisted his entire body around as he struggled to hold on. As quick as the giant rushed in, he disappeared again, his massive frame swallowed by the fog. Scrambling for balance, Canute whipped his shield low in front. The scent of char filled his nose, and the scorches left on the wooden planks were indelible. Too startled to focus, he hunched, unsure of what to do when his foe growled behind him. The giant McCool threw himself forward for a double blow. One flew too high to catch the top of Canute's head. The other he took on the shield again, which by some impossible measure deflected the wedge down and away. He backpedaled as Luganian pressed. The upper edge split, breaking the iron band, but the rest of his meager wall remained as he continued to retreat. Smoke rose off the wood, acrid and black. Yet the second axe did not follow. Canute halted, bracing in case he had chosen to meet death for a foolish pause. Yet no blow fell. He spied around the remains of his blackened shield and, to his astonishment, found the giant McCool face down in the bloody sand. Shocked beyond words, Canute peered over the top. The giant started, raising up on his hands and knees to lunge at Canute. He landed face first in the wet sand, groaning from the impact of his flop. A feeble attempt followed to arise again, but a shaking seized him, leaving him unable to do more than jerk in Canute's direction. Watching the Highlander unable to do more than flail against his failing body, Canute slowly neared. Blinking the wane water away from his eyes, his hunter glared back at him, having rolled onto his back in one last show of strength. The reason for his collapse was revealed in the many wounds on his limbs and torso, which had been burnt during the battle. Bleeding from a nasty gash on the top of a massive head covered in wiry black hair masked his face in gore. But in those black eyes, a mix of unyielding menace and a stark need for an end to it all, Canute found only suffering. His mind, his soul, yearned to fight on, but his body had surrendered, trapping the giant McCool for a brutal end. There! Down the beach appeared a cadre of 7 men. They marched toward Canute. A fresh wave of fear conquered him. He searched about his feet for a weapon, and by cruel happenstance discovered his father's spear. Grimringer lay in the sand, covered in grit. He snatched it up in his free hand. Too tired to run, and too many to fight off by himself, he waited until he discerned a common pattern on their shields, the open-winged eagle of Helmland. His brother in arms, Canute lowered his spear. Then he glanced at the fallen giant McCool. Still alive, still suffering. He knew what his people did to prisoners. Something stirred inside him, an unwillingness to create more suffering after the calamity of everything else that day. Canute had already made his decision before the other men arrived. I didn't slay him, Canute said through the tears stinging his eyes, hands braced on the table's edge. The spear had been knocked to the floor in his drunken sorrow, every ounce of self-loathing revealed. Mercy, he sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. I just wanted to give the man mercy. Whatever he had to say next disappeared in the outright shame of the confession, his face buried in his hands. He wept until breathless. The only survivor of the boat he had taken from Fishton, flashes of that horrid moment on Stormguard played again and again, until Canute could not bear to look at his king, not when the eyes of the giant McCool haunted him. None of it, be it a lordship or victory or survival, could get those eyes to stop looking at Canute, staring forever, even glazed in death. They cursed him for his cowardice, or his kindness. He could not tell. The White King said nothing, slouched in his seat as he struggled to balance his mead cup on a knee. He stared at Canute with those rheumy eyes, lost for a moment. Without word or warning, he quaffed its dregs, draining it to the end. He set it down and rose, unsteady at first. Stand up, boy, the White King said in a low, grumbling tone. I sure shit can't lift you. Canute slowly straightened, his knees aching. He still refused to meet the White King's gaze, instead choosing his lord's boots. The toe of the left one was crusted with vomit. The ruler of Helmland leaned on the table, too inebriated to stand. "You know, I'm going to go out there, at the feast after this, and announce that I'm gifting lands to you. A title as well, equal to your father's. I don't deserve it." Drew a mean laugh. "You still think this is about who gets what they deserve?" Canute swallowed, too worn to argue. His eyes hurt from weeping. "It's all shit, Canute," the White King said. "Always has been. But, as your king, may I give you some advice?" Helmland's liege reached out with a grimy hand and clapped Canute's shoulder. "Be happy you have such an easy lie." Hopeful his lord had reached out to provide a path back to honor, the words instead seized Canute like the sight of the giant Makul had. Yet instead of mortal terror, or the nightmare of watching men die around him, it was replaced by a deeper despair. Shame for the man he had killed and whom he had killed him for. "Power goes to fools," the White King said, "and too often fools do not use that power the right way. They mire in their egos, their pasts, or what they didn't have or didn't do, in their minds. You don't have to do that, Canute. You're very lucky." "How?" Canute asked. "How am I lucky in any way?" "Most men make up a story to build their glory. Yours fell right at your feet, and the White King playfully mimicked a downward thrust with an invisible spear. "Now the question is what you will do with it. You could do what you have done for me. Bravely admit the truth for the sake of a single man's honor, but at the cost of Helmland's honor and glory. But what matters more? Helmland's honor or yours?" Canute did not have to be led. Helmland's. People have died for glory, but honor, it ruins the story. The White King clicked his tongue and shook his head. He noticed Grimringer on the floor, discarded in Canute's sorrow. "Has old Olaf ever told you the true count he took that day? Or does the number change and you all say nothing as he grows doddering with old age?" Canute gritted his teeth, roused by the insinuation. "My lord?" "Take your lands, Canute. Farm them, find some woman, and screw some heirs out of her to make sure it's not all lost before you're dead. And never say a word. Don't say a word when I leave this room, which I'm about to do because I must piss. Don't say a word to the lords you're about to be counted among. Don't say a word to the woman you bed, to the children you whelp, or on your dying bed. By doing that, you will serve Helmland." Canute averted his eyes and settled his gaze on the blackened shield leaned against the table. He pursed his lips together in a thin, bloodless line. "Oh, be cheered, boy," said the White King. "It takes effort to be honest. It takes nothing to be a hero." Canute did not bow to his liege as the White King stumbled to the chamber door and departed, too delirious to know better. Alone again before the chamberlain came to collect him, he studied the shield he had brought back, remembering the effort, the losses, and the dead not there to stand where he was. He asked aloud the question he wanted to inquire of the king, but had not dared. What does it take to be a king? Canute found himself searching out his cup again, instead of the answer.
Taken from their eponymous debut album that roared into our hearts in 2001, this is Treacherous Gods by Finland's and Sifram. It's with great pleasure I get to reintroduce a French producer who appeared on the very first episode of Pondering the Orb, and given all the things that are happening right now, it seemed like a good time to have him back. Playing Phases, this is from the indelible French producer, Crozier. Change is a constant, but as we break away from our chains, we find ourselves more and more down the road. Stumbling, maybe, but forward toward the light at all times. I'll see you all again soon, and I'll tell you a little bit more about the quest we're going to be on. But until then, safe journeys, my friends.